This is my video for literature for Standard 10. The Little Match Girl, written by Hans Christian Andersen. Now, dear children, you can see the markings in red. I would advise you to mark these in your textbook because these are important lines and they will be helpful to you for the answers in your workbook. It was bitterly cold, snow was falling, and there was darkness gathering. Now, it was the last evening of the old year. It was New Year's Eve. Now, in this cold and gloomy evening, a poor little girl walked bareheaded and barefoot through the streets. Now, you can see the description of the little girl who was shivering, wearing nothing in the cold. She wore slippers which were given to her by her mother, but then when she tried to escape running from two carriages across the street, they were lost. One slipper couldn't be found, and a wicked boy ran off with the other. The little match girl sold matches for a living. In her old apron, she carried a great many matches, and she had a packet of them in her hand as well. Nobody had bought any from her, and she didn't even have a single penny. She crept along shivering and hungry, the picture of misery. Poor little girl. Snowflakes fell on her long golden hair, which curled so prettily about her neck. Now she could see lights shining in every window, and since it was New Year's Eve, she could not think of anything else except the smell of the roasted goose which she smelled in the street. At last she huddled down in a heap in a corner formed by two houses, of which projected further out into the street. But though she tucked her little legs up under her, she felt colder and colder. And yet she did not dare to go home because her father would surely beat her, as she had not earned a single NP, neither sold a matchstick. The wind whistled around her. Her thin hands were so numb with cold that she thought she would strike a match and keep herself warm. She pulled one out and it spluttered and burnt. It had a warm, bright flame like a tiny candle, and she held her hands over it. Now, with that little matchstick warming her hands, she imagined that she stood in front of a great iron stove with polished brass knobs and brass ornaments. The fire gave out such a lovely warmth, and she felt wonderful. Now, children, she struck 4 matchsticks, and you have to be very, very alert and learn what she imagined she saw when she struck each matchstick. Now, let us take the second matchstick which she struck. It burnt clearly, and the light fell upon the neighboring wall. Now the bricks became transparent like gauze, and she could see right into the room where a shining white dishcloth was spread on the table. It was covered with beautiful china, and in the center of it stood a roast goose stuffed with prunes and apples, steaming deliciously. And what was even more, she saw the goose hopping right down from the dish and waddling across the floor with a carving knife and fork on its back, and it waddled up straight to her. Then out went the match. Now let us take the third match. She struck another match, and suddenly she was sitting under the most beautiful Christmas tree. It was much larger and lovelier than the one she had seen last year through the glass doors of a rich merchant's house. 1,000 candles lit up the branches, and gaily colored Christmas balls, like those in the shop windows, shone around the tree. She reached forward with both hands to touch them. Then out went the matchstick. And these candles on the Christmas tree rose higher and higher through the air, and she saw that they had now turned into bright stars. And one of them became a shooting star, and it fell streaking across the sky. Now she thought to herself, someone is dying, because her grandmother had told her that whenever a star fell, a soul went up to God. She struck another match. This is the fourth match on the wall. Once more there was light, and in the glow stood her old grandmother, so bright and shining, so gentle and loving. The girl cried out to her and asked her to take her with her. She knew that the match would disappear, the light would disappear, and then her grandmother would too. Then she said you would vanish like the warm stove and the lovely roast goose and the Christmas tree. Then she struck all the rest of the matches in the packet because she wanted to keep her grandmother with her. All the matches flared up with such a blaze that it was brighter than daylight, and her old grandmother looked more beautiful and stately than before. She took the little girl in her arms and flew with her high up, so high towards the glory and joy. And that's the time everything, all suffering, stopped for the little girl. Now she was neither cold, nor hungry, nor fearful of her father, because now they were both with God. But in the cold dawn, in the corner formed by the two houses, sat the little girl with rosy cheeks and smiling lips. But she was frozen to death on that last evening of that old year. The dawn of the new year rose on the huddled figure of the girl. She was still holding the matches, and half a packet had been burnt. People said a lot of things. They also said she was evidently trying to warm herself, poor thing. But nobody knew of the beautiful visions she had seen, and in what a blaze of glory she had entered heaven with her dear old grandmother. Only she and her grandma. Now I would ask all you children to see the questions given in your workbook and try and do them. And in my next video, I would post a little play depicting this little match girl. Thank you.